whenever I have speech in conferences that I don't need your pity. I'm telling my story because I want you to act on it. The
Mm.
Philippines is not emitting a lot of carbon emission, but here I am in first world countries telling you what's happening in our country so you can make decisions that is fair not just for you but also for the people that are experiencing the brunt of a crisis we haven't even caused.
Surviving a super typhoon and its aftermath in her fishing village at the age of 16 set the course for Marinel Ubaldo's future. Using her story and her education, Marinel directly addresses environmental crises while advocating for those who contribute the least but are impacted the most by climate change. Thank you for joining Lynn Foley, host of Remarkable Women, Powerful Stories, as we hear from Marinelle about her journey.
So I grew up in a small fishing village in Eastern Samar in the Philippines. So our island is Samar, and we are at the very last village on our peninsula, facing the Pacific Ocean. It's a really beautiful place. It's surrounded by sea, surrounded by coconut trees, lining the roads, and the smell of salt in the air. But it's also a place where it's a place that sits right on the path of typhoon. So growing up, growing up there meant living with both the beauty and the brutality of nature. You know, my father is a fisherman and my mother is a homemaker. So we lived a simple life. No luxuries, but a strong sense of community. Everyone is sharing their food, everyone looks up at each other, and my sibling and I would help my father mend fishing nets or sell fish at the local market. And really, our family's income depended entirely on the sea. And those early experiences taught me about interdependence and also, you know, vulnerability because they showed me what it meant to live in a place where survival depends on forces far beyond your control. And even where small changes in climate could mean hunger and loss. And the thing is, a lot of people don't even know that climate change has been affecting their livelihood. But later on, we found out all of this interconnectedness, and that made me realize how vulnerable we are to climate change and climate disasters because of our geographic location. But you know what? My parents raised us to be hopeful and very hardworking. So even life was very uncertain, they would tell us that, you know, education is something no one can take away from you. So I started my activism educating a lot of youth and children in our communities because my belief my belief became my anchor that even if everything else was taken, what you learn, what you stand for, and how you treat others would always stay with you. And that's I think the foundation that shaped my path as an activist too.
Mm. So it's I guess it feels a little bit like a precarious living situation as well when you live right on the sea and you rely totally on the sea, which is so unpredictable, isn't it? And we can't control it. We're just have to manage it. I know that back in earlier times, back in 2013, as a result of a catastrophic typhoon, your home, community, and family livelihood were destroyed. I understand that discussing this can be difficult. So, are there any aspects of this recovery period and that time that you can share with us today, which will help all of us to better understand the severity of the global climate change we now face?
Yeah, you know, when Super Typhoon Haiyan, that's the international name, or Yolanda as we call it locally, hit in November of 2013. It's actually 12 years, and I was 16 years old when it happened. It's still really hard up until now to put into words what it felt like. When the wind sounded like hundreds of rains crashing at once, the storm the storm surge swallowed almost our entire village. And my family just did our best to survive that day when we felt like everything has been stolen from us. And when the storm finally passed, it felt like the silence after the end of the world. It felt like it felt like in the movies when it's the end of the world, you don't have any house, you don't have any food, your house is washed out, your whole community is trying to survive. Your whole community is hopeless. When you don't know what the future holds, you don't know what tomorrow brings, you don't know if you will have food later. And in the middle of all of this, you will see dead bodies of the people. When you knew that people, your relatives, and your family outside of your province thought that you were all dead. When there is another disaster that is coming, I would say you haven't even survived that recent typhoon because really it was so hard to survive after the typhoon. A lot of people would think that, oh, you just have to survive now. You just have to survive
Mm,
during the typhoon. But you know what was really hard to survive was after the typhoon. How are
mm,
you going through with your life? How are you going to push through with life, knowing that a lot of people have died? The survivor's guilt was so real. And
mm,
when we lost everything, when we lost our home, our livelihood, and some of
mm,
our friends and neighbors, even our sense of safety was lost. Like for days, we had no food, we had no clean water. And I remember seeing bodies being carried down the street and people walking aimlessly because they had nowhere to go. But what stood out most was what happened after the storm, the inequality that followed.
mm,
So aid came, but not fast enough, right? Some
mm,
communities received help immediately, while others, like ours, waited for days and maybe weeks. I
mm,
saw how systems failed the poorest, and I realized, that climate disasters don't hit everyone equally. They hit hardest those who have contributed the least to the problem. During recovery, our community showed incredible resilience. But we are also so tired of being resilient. The global
mm,
community has been praising us for being resilient, has been praising the Filipino people, and not just the Filipino people, a lot of
mm,
vulnerable nations around the world. They will always tell us that we are
mm,
resilient. But, during that time, being resilient is not a choice. It was a survival skill. Um, and seeing these people rebuilding their their houses with bare hands, sharing what little they had, it gave me a lot of hope, and a lot of people will see that as resiliency, but really those are the time that we needed each other, so we had that survival instinct, survival skill to be in a community with people in our village. But also that period also made me question global fairness. Like, I was always thinking, like, why should a young girl from a small village have to lose her home because of decisions made in boardrooms halfway across the world?
mm.
When Super Typhoon Haiyan happened, the Philippines was emitting 0.004% of the world's carbon emission. That's like, that's
Nothing.
nothing. Right, right. That's nothing. So that's when I really decided that I would spend my life telling our story, bringing our stories in spaces where people are talking about climate change as if it will happen in 100 years. But
Mm,
I refuse to be just a victim because as a survivor, I just refuse to stay silent. And I am carrying that story and not telling that story as if I am a victim. I know that I have power in my story, and I
mm.
I just want to make sure that these stories from Global South are also being mainstreamed in spaces where we don't have a voice.
It's interesting how you speak about resilience, and we put so in everywhere in the world today. We put so much emphasis on resilience, and your way in which you speak about it. It's not a choice. it's something that you have to do when you're in dire circumstances, whatever they are. And the community brings that resilience or the ability to survive. It's really interesting. Marinel, thank you so much for sharing that story. I know you share it a lot, but it doesn't diminish its power and the grief of it even 12 years on. Thank you. We really appreciate you. Your secondary schooling was interrupted at this time, given you were 16. And even at that age, you wanted to pursue a college and university at some time. What enabled you to achieve this? Because you were on the brink of finishing secondary school at the time. So what aided or helped you to achieve that dream, which I know you have, and how important was that education for you? And then maybe take that into how important it is for other women and girls in today's world.
It was really after Super Typhoon Haiyan, our school was completely destroyed. We stopped schooling for like 6 months, and we studied under tents and tarpaulins for months because we didn't have even school supplies to study. Many of my friends and many of the students as well dropped out because their family can't send them to school anymore. Their family needed someone to help them rebuild their houses, and some of their families had to relocate. So others others needed to work, and they were sent to big cities like Manila so they can send money home because rebuilding is expensive, and for a coastal community like Matarino, my village, it's really expensive to always try to rebuild after a super typhoon or every other typhoon. But you know what? I was really determined to continue. I know that my parents can't afford it. I know that they would not be able to send me to college. So I was thinking, education became my act of resistance at some point. I believe that by studying, I was rebuilding not just my own life, but also my community's future. And so I was so glad that I graduated as a valedictorian, and that gave me an automatic scholarship to college as a valedictorian. And also some organizations like Plan International supported me with my schooling, and some of that was also was the trauma recovery programs, which at that time, right after Super Typhoon Haiyan, was not available for us. So it was hard to still try to chase your dream while also trying to rebuild a life, while also trying thinking about how my father's going back to fishing so we can eat. It was hard to think about my future, which I think at that point I was thinking it was so selfish. I was thinking that it feels selfish to think about my future right now when everyone's just trying to survive. But it felt like it was my act of resistance. It felt like if I don't study now, I would not be able to help my community, and I wouldn't be able to help
Mm,
my family.
mm,
So I was able to attend university in the Philippines. My undergraduate is actually social work, but because my heart is really into helping people, so I've worked in community organizing setting in an orphanage in Tacloban as well. But I really wanted to give back to our community. Um, but then a really active, I became active in climate activism, and I've been doing a lot of petitions and global campaigns around climate justice, just energy transition. And I was very lucky to be able to have a platform where I could tell our story. But you know what? When I was being invited to these big conferences, I felt like I felt so tired. I was so tired telling our story
mm,
and getting people's feedback. People always ask me, how can we help? What can we do? I'm so sorry that it happened to you.
mm,
I always say whenever I have speech in conferences that I don't need your pity. I'm telling my story because I want you to act on it. The Philippines is not emitting a lot of carbon emission, but here I am in first world countries telling you what's happening in our country so you can make decisions that is fair not just for you but also for the people that are experiencing the brunt of a crisis we haven't even caused. And
Mm,
I always tell them start within your country. Vote for people that actually cares for the environment and not just for their own biases, you know? Um, and it has gotten so tiring to always tell my story and feel like nothing was happening. I feel like I
mm,
was not part of the table where decisions are being made that involves our future. So I decided to go to go back to school for my master's. Fortunately, I was given scholarship by Duke University to study environmental management in the US. So that's the reason
mm,
why I came to the US. I wanted to learn more about this space and the field that I am so passionate about. I am certain that this is the path that I want to take. I am really passionate in this work and I want to have the technical knowledge of of environmental management so I can be in spaces where, decisions are being made. But that journey wasn't also easy. I was often the only young woman of color, the only one from disaster affected community in the room, but I knew I carried the voices of my people with me. So that really kept me going. So, for me, education is climate adaptation.
mm.
It's a pathway to empowerment, especially for women and girls. When when girls have access to education, we gain the ability to make decisions about our own lives, about our own communities, and about our own futures. And really, education allows us to challenge norms, to claim spaces, and create the change we wish to see. So it's not just about degrees for me. It's about also dignity. It's about agency, and it's about equality.
You've already touched on the fact that as a young woman, you were already engaging in activism and using your story and trying to get people to listen, and you've continued to do that. When I first met you, you spoke a little bit about that master's program. And when you were in that program, you went through a really big change of thinking and approach to that activism or working with organisations and governments about climate justice. I'd really like you to talk a little about what that change was and how has it made a real difference in the work that you do.
Yeah, I was really I would say that because I survived Super Typhoon Haiyan and I saw all of those inequalities, I have a lot of rage in me. I blamed, all of big polluters and people that have supported these big polluters. And in my work in the Philippines, I work with communities, but I make sure that when we work with the communities, we don't like give space to talk or have a conversation with the people that are like the big polluters. Like it seems like talking with them is a betrayal to my community at that point because
Mm,
they cost this. They are
mm,
literally profiting from our suffering. They're profiting from the loss of lives, from loss of our livelihood and loss of our home. Like, why would we give them space to talk with us? Why
mm,
would we give them a platform? But when I came to the US, I realized that there is a way where we can work with people. And also this came from a background of I cannot change like I cannot change the system right now alone. I don't have the power, I don't have the resources, and I I just don't have the power and the resources to do it. But these people who have titles, these people who are actually doing the decision making, if we work with them, there could be a way that we can collaborate. And I think that's one thing that I've learned how to compromise in when I got to the US is how we can get into a solution together. Because I've realized that when we point finger to people, they become defensive, right? They're saying, like,
mm,
well, we're doing this, our foundation is doing this, blah, blah, blah. We all know it's greenwashing. We all know it's not. We all know it's not it's it is not what we're wanting them to do. We want them to change their business model so they are not fueling climate change, because that's the root cause of the problem. We don't want them to just give money because they have a lot of money. They're
mm,
just giving money when disaster happens. We want them to be proactive and change their model so climate climate disasters like Super Typhoon Haiyan would not happen again. And that's what we want. But we need to get them to be on board with that. We need to get them to be with us on that. We need to have, we need to give them the space and the opportunity to understand what we are going through, instead of just like blaming them. And then
mm.
because they're also human, it's humans innately are good people. Um,
Yes, they are. They absolutely are, aren't they?
right,
Yeah.
right. We always like there is a research that could that could back up that whenever there are disasters, a lot of people, whatever your political instance is, whatever wherever you are politically or wherever you are in climate denial or climate acceptance, people come together to support people that are struggling whenever there are disasters.
Mm,
During COVID, people came together to support each other. So innately, humans are good. We just have to get them to, we just need to get them on board to where we're trying to go. Because at the end, I believe, and I want to believe that at the end, we all want to have a future that is for everyone. We all
mm,
want to have a future where our children will be able to live and they will not just be surviving every other typhoon.
mm.
And I think that's one thing that really has helped my work right now, especially working in the US on environmental justice, and climate justice and racial and economic
Mm.
justice issues.
So, so is it that, I might be wrong here, but is it that as you've grown a little older, you've done your study and you continue to work in this field very, very passionately, that you've moved a little bit from outrage, from that outrage and blaming into uh, informing and encouraging and bringing people together on behalf of this globally? Because you're right, the global inequality is what we all notice and see, and you've articulated that so well. So, am I right there? It's like you've just gently moved down the continuum.
Yeah, and I think it goes back and forth. You're right.
Mm,
Like right now, my family has just survived another category 4 typhoon. And there is
yes.
another super typhoon that has just entered the Philippine area of responsibility just today. There is a lot of rage for me seeing that as a breadwinner as well, and seeing how my family is always trying to survive every other disaster,
Mm,
while we did have the money to for flood controls, for climate adaptation and mitigation, but those were all pocketed and corrupted by our politicians. So I have a lot of rage right now. Like
mm,
I think I think I would not be able to sit down with one of those that have been that one of those people that the government says that they were involved in that corruption,
mm,
because I see them as just evil people responsible for hundreds of deaths of a lot of
mm,
people in the Philippines. I think, but I think that's okay. I realize I have a lot of feelings right now because see the injustice and I see the unfairness
mm.
of it all. I really just wish that they don't do that in the future, you know, that they will not just corrupt. Like this is a really big example of what happens if you
Yeah,
corrupt flood control projects,
yes.
climate adaptation funding, and climate mitigation funding.
Mm,
People die,
mm,
communities being submerged. Like yes, they are living in big nice houses, but not everyone in the
mm,
Philippines are like that. They're getting a lot of hate right now from the Filipino people but how are we moving them from
Mm.
that being corrupt to actually collaborating with us, to make them understand that it's not just them who will be affected. It's not just the poor people in the Philippines that will be affected by climate disaster, but they will also be
Yeah.
affected by that, whatever ivory tower they are living in. Right.
And so if I just take that and it's almost like it's the next revolution, isn't it? That's needed in climate justice. To me, it feels like it's the next revolution that's upon us or needs to be upon us. That's my view of the world. There's so much data and personal stories like yours, in media channels, in conversations everywhere, that's all talking about this disproportionate effect. And particularly if we go into gender, then the disproportionate effect on women and girls.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, and Zonta, that's another one of the main areas that we're focusing on at the moment as well. What do you believe that we all can do differently? What can every single one of us do differently to advance this matter of climate on behalf of women's rights?
That's a really good question. And we can see that around the world, the climate crisis is magnifying gender inequality, especially in disaster zones, right? It's often women who eat last, evacuate last, and rebuild first.
Mm.
We take care of children and also elderly. Yet, our voices are rarely heard in decision-making spaces. Right now, the UN Climate Summit is happening in Belém, Brazil. Where are women on those, on those big spaces where negotiations happening? In the photo that they have sent out of the world leaders that are negotiating, there's no women. And that has been a pattern from the two COPs as well in Dubai and in Azerbaijan. So I would say that the truly advance human rights as women's rights as human rights, we need to change how we define leadership and whose knowledge we value. Indigenous women, fisher folks, farmers, they are already leading adaptation efforts in their communities, but they need resources, they need representation, and they need respect. And governments and organizations must also invest in women-led climate solutions and to ensure that gender budgeting and climate finance, education, reproductive health, and economic empowerment is central in every climate policy. Because people may not know that gender justice and climate justice are very interlinked and very intersectional, because climate justice is very intersectional. Um, and I would say that climate crisis is not gender neutral.
Mm.
And the path to a sustainable future will only be just if it includes and uplifts women's voices.
And there are too few women's voices in this area and in this potential revolution that we're talking about. And I agree with you about the optics and the reality of all the photos we see of world leaders and others who are involved in this, and women seem to be minimised. So yet again, we continue this feminist revolution, but now it again becomes so important, doesn't it, in this climate justice space. And the work you're doing is, your voice is strong and the people you have with you are strong. We need many, many more to join you, don't we?
We need more
So,
people. We need everyone to be in here. That's why I really get, I don't know, this, not frustrated, but I guess discouraged is the word. I get discouraged when people say, I'm not an environmental advocate. Like, there's no, I don't, for some time, I actually did not use climate justice to define me, because I'm like, we should, all of us, should all be climate justice activists. All of us should be environmental justice activists. Because when we fight for environment, we're not just fighting for us. We're not fighting for our family or community. We're fighting for everyone. So
Mm,
as people who are temporary um, tenants of this earth, we all have the responsibility to take care of the environment. So it's not just my responsibility because I say that I love environment. It is everyone. And even if you are in tech, even if you are in different fields, the climate comes to that in that
mm,
field. There's a lot of intersections, and
mm.
whatever you do will be affected by the climate.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about voice and the strength of your voice. What are your superpowers? And how do these assist you in your leadership? Because you are a strong global leader in this space and other spaces. So tell me the superpowers that you have.
That's a really good question, and I've been thinking a lot about that. I think I would say that storytelling might be one of my superpowers. Empathy, because storytelling allows me and a lot of people, right, that have lived experience to turn pain into purpose. I've seen how single story, when told truthfully and with heart, can shift how people think about the climate crisis. Facts, it informs.
Mm,
Graphics, like the numbers and the graphics and all of that, it informs. But stories, it transforms people. I think another one is empathy, because empathy keeps me grounded. I don't see people as numbers. I don't see people as case studies. I see their humanity, I see their hope, and also I see their struggle because it reminds me why I do this work. I would also say that I hate being called resilient, but you know what? Surviving a lot of typhoons, surviving a lot of disaster, we become resilient. It's what you learn when you've survived the unimaginable and still choose to build again. So, coming from a disaster zone teaches us that hope is not naive. It is
mm,
it is necessary. So every time I speak, I think of my family back home, of the communities that continue to face rising tides, and of the young girl who believe that they can do more. That's what really gives me strength is that my voice is not just mine, it's it's theirs too.
So now from your base in North Carolina, you're fully immersed in this work, aren't you?
Yes, in different,
Yeah.
I guess it made me learn, or it I learned that there are different ways to do environmental justice and climate justice activism. And right now, I'm really glad that my work in North Carolina is very hyper local. It's very hyper local. It's really local. um, we work with different communities, really communities that has been impacted by environmental justice, and empowering them and helping them with environmental justice issues. And it's beautiful, and it reminds me that even though I am on the other side of the world, these kind of issues are the same. The issues that we're facing here in the US, the issues that we have faced in the Philippines are the same. They they may see it, it's just a different way of like looking at it, because there it's typhoons, here it's like more environmental justice, but we carry the same message.
And for me, it resonates being based here in Australia and coming into what we would call the fire season, the
Mhm.
possibility of bushfire, the possibility of cyclones, our disturbance from the sea. And your story that you have shared today is more than powerful. It's amazing to hear this from you and the way in which you approach your work today and where it's come from. So thank you Zonda International, thanks you so much for your generosity in being part of this podcast series. And I know that your story will resonate with everyone who watches or listens to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn.